The Appleton Area School District has a $13 million deficit. To address that, they've asked the community which options they're willing to support. Today, we're going to talk about this referendum, the history of education, and some issues specific to Appleton in general. Welcome to the Dairyland Patriot podcast. Our guests today are Dairyland Patriot editor Kelly Fenton and Dairyland Patriot contributor and former teacher Carol Lenz. Kelly, let's get us started.
3 years ago, we had our last referendum here in Appleton. It passed with about 70%, I believe, which was either the highest margin in Appleton history or among the highest. So I think we talked to James Bacon, who is the former school board member and head of or a member of the Friends of Appleton Schools. And we asked him, are you worried that this next request for a potential referendum on the 26th ballot is coming too soon after the last one, which was such a success? And so, he was kind of torn about it. Obviously, he was happy about the enthusiasm that Appleton showed toward public education here. But he also understands that coming back 4 years later is, maybe a deal breaker for some people. And Carol, you've been around for referendums for a long time. I don't know, that turnaround time of 4 years it's pretty quick, right?
So one thing the Appleton School District is really trying to do is to educate the community on what this is and why it is happening. So I think we have to make sure people understand that referendum that you mentioned, Kelly, was a capital referendum, which dealt with buildings. So that is very important. They can only spend the money on those projects. So the one that's being considered now is an operational referendum, which is to keep the lights on, to pay for salaries, utilities, transportation, all of those things that we don't want to cut. So that's the big difference that we need to do. And then what is so difficult is that public education funding is really complicated. Now, as a former teacher, even when I was teaching, I didn't get it. It's very complicated. So I know they're trying hard through their community sessions and their brochures that they're sending out to educate the people on why we're in this position of having a $13 million deficit. And they're not alone. It's very common around the state that this is happening to many schools. And last time I checked, I think within the last 2 years, 3/4 of all school districts have had to go to referendum. So this is not an uncommon thing, but it is tough on taxpayers.
So there's not a referendum yet. They're planning this for 2026, right? But they put out a survey to the community, and there was 4 options, I believe, on that survey, correct? And why did they do that?
Well, I think they want to give the voters the option of funding 11 million, 13 million, 15 million, or 17 million. I think because if you just give them one option of 17 million, you might lose everything and not get anything. And if you just gave them 13 million, then you might not get the amount that they really would like to get, and that James Bacon suggests that they need, which is the 17 million.
Right, because in this really covers 1 year's worth of operating deficit. Is that correct? The 13 million?
I can take that. That 13 million deficit has been over the last several years. It has accumulated. And that is because the state has been underfunding the schools. So they've had to dip in their reserve funds, which they shouldn't be doing because they're getting dangerously low. So, so it's not just from this last year. It didn't happen in 1 year. It's an ongoing problem that has been occurring.
Okay, thank you.
I might just say before we get into why the Appleton School District and why all school districts around the state are struggling, because there's a long list of reasons. We might talk a little bit about what that capital referendum got the school district in 22. Carol and I went out to various schools for their open house in late August. Number one, they opened a brand new state-of-the-art elementary school, Sandy Slope, I believe that's called, right? For the ever-expanding north side of Appleton. And it is a gorgeous facility and a much-needed facility. There were new classrooms. There were 10 new classrooms at one of the, I believe it might have been Appleton North or one of the elementary schools. So lots of new facilities. I might have had a little bit of quibble with some of the state-of-the-art athletics that they've put in at various schools around the area. And but James Bacon had a good answer about that, which is athletics is part of curriculum. It's part of extracurricular activities and very important.
Yeah, physical fitness is the foundation of mental fitness and well-being in general. So and also, to be honest, very popular with a lot of parents and kids that go there. So
yeah, I could maybe see people who are hesitant to go to another referendum to look at, say, Appleton North. It's kind of almost like a small college facility. But again, it's a cultural thing for kids. And as James Bacon says, building a new stadium is a maintenance issue. And so it's something that is an investment in the future as well.
I think one reason they needed the capital referendum is because they moved the sixth graders from the elementary schools into the middle schools. So it created a real need for additions in the middle schools. And one thing Appleton has been doing is then repurposing an elementary school, one for sure, maybe two, to save money. So that is part of their process in trying to save some money before they go into referendum.
Carol, can you talk a little bit about some of the main reasons that school districts are
Okay, this will get a little wonky,
much?
but I can do that. So in 1993, the state legislature passed a freeze on revenue limits. A revenue limit is how much a school can spend per student. And so that number was frozen all around the state. And unfortunately, every school was at a different level. And that disparity, even though they have done some tweaking over the years, that disparity between schools has remained. So Appleton is about $1,500 less per student than other schools about the same size. Actually, $1,500 less than the average in the state. So we're behind. And then when I look at the whole picture, the state of Wisconsin is quite below the national average. So when you add that all up, we're fighting a losing battle unless we do a referendum. They don't have much choice but to go to referendum. So that's been a big problem. And then, of course, inflation. The state has not provided any inflationary increase for 16 years. So for 16 years, our schools have had to chip away at what they've been doing. So a student who graduated this last year has gone through the entire system where they have had to whittle down their educational opportunities. So, and I think when Appleton put out the four choices for their referendum, I think that's why they added the last one, the 17 million, so that maybe we could start digging out of that hole little by little.
Yeah, I know Appleton is ranks 14th out of 15 districts around the state in per pupil funding. I also know, because I saw the chart, because of the decoupling of inflation to increased revenue, per pupil spending is actually down like $3,500. And it has cost the Appleton School District alone over that period $54 million. So you can see where we're in a $13 million hole, but we've also lost that much money just to inflation over the last 25 years, I guess, or more.
Right. And then I attended one of the listening sessions that they had. And one thing I thought was very interesting is when Superintendent Harches showed the tax bill. I think it was a personal tax bill, and how it had barely increased in real dollars over the last 14 years. So I did my taxes. I went back and looked at my taxes since I think it was 2014 till now, and my school tax increased only $67 over that whole time. So I think that was an eye-opening thing for me to see that. And of the school tax, at least 10% of that now is going to voucher schools, private schools. So that's another thing that people are not aware of, that 10% of their school taxes aren't going to the public schools.
And Carol, speaking to that tax rate, the chart from the Legislative Fiscal Bureau, I believe, it showed that in 2025 dollars, people paid an average of $9.08 was their tax rate back in 2010. And in 2025 dollars today, it's actually $6.10. So it's people are actually paying in real dollars $3 less on their property taxes today. So people that think that they're being gouged on property taxes, the reality is that they're not, even though it, I'm sure, feels that way to them.
Yeah, you mentioned inflation before, and I couldn't imagine going to the grocery store and trying to feed a family with the same amount of money that I did in 2009. And think about how much the quality of the food that we would be eating and the impact that would have on us to short ourselves the whole time. And even like healthcare costs. I'm sure they're going up. I think I saw something around 10% a year. And that's another thing where the funding really isn't keeping up with the increase in healthcare costs that the school district has to pay. So that's just ridiculous. Does any money come from the federal government?
I was just going to add that, yes. That is a little bit unpredictable right now, but I think approximately 8% of Appleton's school budget is federal funding. And we don't know where that's going to land. So that's kind of a scary thing.
Wasn't there just something released where they're trying to shut down the Department of Education, and they're trying to move this budget money to various other departments that aren't focused on education, that can't coordinate the funds in a reasonable way. So, if that's approximately 8% of the budget and you're not sure how much of that you're going to get or where it's going to come from or what you have to do to get it, that's got to be difficult for school administrators.
Yeah, and Carol, I'm sorry.
I was going to say that's very true. And it's so unpredictable right now that I think school districts aren't saying anything about it because they don't know. They don't know how it's going to end up.
Sure.
Carol, do I understand that? I thought I understood that special education money comes from the federal government, or a certain percentage.
Not all of it. A portion of
Okay.
it comes from the federal government. They promised to pay 40% of special education costs, and they have never lived up to that. I think it's about 13%. And then the state is supposed to contribute also, and that has been way underfunded for years. At one point, it was 70% that the state paid, and now it was just reported that we're down to 35%.
And that's another area of disparity between public and voucher schools. What can you tell me about the difference in how voucher or private schools and public schools get funded for special education?
Right. The special education voucher is funded at basically full funding, but that is not the case in public school. We're limited to 35% at most right now.
So that means, like, theoretically, the public schools could be eligible for more funding, but if they run out of money, they run out of money and they don't get fully funded. But when it comes to the private or voucher schools, that money is guaranteed. They get much more than public schools, and all of it is guaranteed. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's called sum sufficient. Private school voucher is sum sufficient. They get whatever they need, guaranteed. And public schools, we get a pot of money, and when it's gone, it's gone. So if there's more students or more increased costs, we just have to eat that. And that's the problem. Most school districts, Appleton included, they transfer about 10% of their funds from general education just to cover that gap, that unfunded gap that is required for special education, rightfully required for special education.
And doesn't some of the burden, well, number one, voucher or private schools can deny people if they don't want them there, if they don't want to deal with it, but they can also put some of the burden from their special education students on public schools?
Yes, public schools have to do all the assessments. Oftentimes they do the transportation. And if there is a service that the private school can't provide, then the public school is obligated to do that. But the private school keeps the money.
Well,
Carol, what do you think is the best way to educate taxpayers about what's going on? Because, you see a lot of hostility toward public education out there just because we probably, it's probably losing the PR war, and people just don't understand. And they think voucher schools are the answer. And I'm sure they have no idea the disparities between public education and vouchers, and the advantages vouchers have, and just how much it costs public education.
Well, that's the $13 million question.
Precisely.
This is it right here, Kelly, this podcast.
And I think the Appleton schools are doing the best they can under a tight timeline, right? I mean, they are planning to get the survey out and back by the end of November. Then the school board will take a look at it in December, and then January, they have to make a decision. Because if they go to referendum, it'll happen in April, on the April election. So I think they're doing as good as they can. It's really hard because it is such a complicated issue, and I'm still learning. So it's a tough issue. I think, though, people in Appleton are good supporters of their schools, and we have good private schools and we have good public schools, and I think people appreciate that. So I do think they'll get one of those four choices in April.
And it'll be up to the Board of Education to make that decision. Is that as to what goes on the ballot?
That's my understanding. They will, if they choose to do a referendum, it would be one of those four.
Okay. So they would not be offering the voters a choice among various options. Okay. All right.
So So we mentioned before that there are specific issues to the Appleton School District. What else can you tell me about that? What other issues are they facing?
Well, there's the school lunch program, which it's escaping me what it's called, the CPA. I should look that up. The schools that are eligible for free lunch.
That's a federal program, so we have to keep our eye on that. So that's one of the federal government's Title I programs. So the thing that it's unique about Appleton is it has a high percentage of economically disadvantaged students and a high percentage of special education students, and over 65 different languages are spoken in the school. So all of those kids need special support, and that's what costs a lot of money.
Well, in your article you wrote the other day had the score or the grade report card on the districts that received meets expectations, which was number 3, and then those that exceed. And it's not coincidental that the 2 that received 3s, which was Appleton and Menasha, I believe, also happen to have the first and third highest number of students with special needs. And then when you start adding in second English learners and low income, it just shows you that the extra demand on those schools impacts the quality of education if you're not funding it properly. Am I right in saying that, Carol?
Yes.
Yeah. It's the community eligibility provision, I believe is what it's called, CEP. So the way it works is this is for lunches at public schools. If a certain percentage of the students receive certain government assistance, and I think Medicaid is one, and there's a couple others. If a certain percentage of those families are receiving government aid, then the whole school receives free lunches. If the school does not reach that threshold, then the only people that are eligible for free lunches are students in low-income families. But there ends up being the people in the middle who don't qualify for a free lunch, but really can't afford it. And I think it's $15 a week. And what ends up happening is the school district ends up eating that cost if the families can't pay through the course of the year. And I think the Appleton School District was in a $30 million hole over time as a result of having to pay for those lunches that didn't qualify for free federal money or that the families couldn't afford, if that is clear at all. So that's another deficit for the school district.
Well, free lunch for all. Make it simple.
Free lunch for some.
So, so what do you think, Carol? You probably know the most about education funding. What are some things that you think should be high priority that would move the needle, maybe specifically for Appleton or the state or a nation in general?
Well, our legislature has to get on the move. This last budget, they provided 0 increase for public schools. So we have to start getting back to at least funding the increase in inflation so that schools can start to move. I think that's important. And then I know every school district around the state was requesting at least a 60% reimbursement for special education in this last budget, and it didn't even get to that. So that's the other thing. So those 2 things would make a huge difference. And then there's a lot of micromanaging that's happening in Madison on our schools and our curriculum and all the red tape which should be a local issue. That would help also if they could let the schools self-govern. That would be a step in the right direction.
Wouldn't
Right.
that
What
also
about-
have Republican support, Carol?
Sure.
Yeah.
What about addressing the disparities between the voucher system and public schools? Because it seems like with the Republican control over the last decade and a half, they've really tilted the playing field in favor of voucher schools, which frankly, large sections of Wisconsin don't even really have options for voucher schools.
Well, that has created a big problem. I know it's almost $1 billion a year that goes to voucher schools. When you add up Milwaukee and Racine, and then the statewide program, and then the special education voucher, it's getting close to $1 billion a year of our tax money. So one thing that would help is if they would inform people that they're doing that, right? It should be on your tax bill that you're not only paying for public schools, but you're paying for private schools. I think just the education of that would help a lot, so people knew where their money was going. And there should also be equal transparency to the schools that get public funding, right? And equal accountability. I don't understand how you can hand out money without knowing if you have any return on your investment.
Right. Right.
And it's going to get worse, right, Carol? Because the qualifications for voucher students are, I can't remember what those thresholds are, but I know more and more people are going to be eligible based on income, right?
Yes, after this school year, the enrollment cap will be lifted, but not the income eligibility cap. So anybody under, I think it's 300% of the poverty level will qualify and will get a voucher. And that's a lot of people. And most of the kids who go to private schools on a voucher never were in a public school.
We should say that if you go to SPF, or let me say that again, spfeedback.com, you can, I believe, request a survey. Although if you can't get it online, you can call 920-852-5300, extension 60111, and request a code. And you can plug that code in at that website and take the survey. And obviously, we're encouraging everyone to take the survey, everyone who supports public schools anyway. But, and also the Friends of Appleton Schools, they listed what happens with each scenario. And if we would support just 11 million, there would be $2 million in cuts because of that 13 million deficit. And there would be class closings, and they'd have to close some music and art classes, mental health. So they really would like to see that 17 million, because James Bacon talked about we need a mindset of abundance rather than a mindset of survival. And that's where we need to be. And I think it's a political thing, obviously, and I think Carol would agree that there is a purposeful attempt by Republicans to starve public education. And unless we, get the right people in both chambers and in the governor's mansion, we're not going to change this, because it's a willful effort.
Well, public education should not be partisan. And for most people, it is not. And for some of the elected legislators, it is not. But it is, for some of them, it is very partisan, unfortunately.
All right. Anything else to add from either of you?
I just wanted to mention that the Friends of Appleton Schools has tons of information on their Facebook page. I don't know if they're on other social platforms or not, but it's very thorough. You can learn a lot.
Super.
And while we're at it, we should say the Dairyland Patriot has covered public education pretty thoroughly. Carol has put out a couple articles recently, and then we did our interview with James Bacon, and so lots of good information at the Dairyland Patriot as well.
Yeah, and we've on the YouTube site that we have, there was a video that we recorded from the Fox Valley Advocates for Public Education, who hosted, I believe it was 5 school district administrators talking about budget-related issues when the Wisconsin budget was being debated. That is all for today's episode of the Dairyland Patriot podcast. The Dairyland Patriot is an independent publication launched in May of 2025. We publish honest, uncompromising news for Wisconsin and beyond. We cut through the noise, hold power accountable, and amplify stories that matter. Truth prospers here. If you want more coverage of this and other stories, head over to our site at dairylandpatriot.com and subscribe to our newsletter. Thanks for listening. And that's all for this episode of the Dairyland Patriot. Thank you so much for tuning in and spending some time with us today. Your listenership truly means the world. If you enjoyed what you heard, please consider showing your support. The best way to do that is to like, subscribe, and even leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. It really helps us reach more folks across Wisconsin and beyond. For more in-depth articles, analysis, and all of our latest updates, make sure to visit our site, dairylandpatriot.com. And of course, join in the conversation. You can find us active on all major social media platforms. We love hearing your thoughts and engaging with our community. Until next time, this has been the Dairyland Patriot, signing off. Stay informed, stay engaged, and stick together.